While we live in a world where people increasingly depend upon information and communication technology infrastructure, we also come across news reporting the rapid increase in cyber crimes caused by the misuse of cyberspace and information and communication technology. Cybersecurity needs to be urgently ensured. I'm going to talk about the actions taken by Japan for the realization of a free, fair, and safe cyberspace. There are three pillars. The first pillar is the promotion of rule of law. Japan has joined the United Nations group of governmental experts in 2014 and has actively participated in the discussion to promote a rules-based cyberspace, for example, by promoting the discussion on the application of international law to cyberspace and the development of non-binding norms in cyberspace. Japan has also been an active member of the UN Open-Ended Working Group on cybersecurity and participated in the preparation of the consensus report on rules in cyberspace, which was adopted unanimously in March. The second pillar is the development of confidence-building measures. Japan has made an effort to develop confidence building by conducting cybersecurity dialogues with 14 nations and regions, including bilateral dialogues with the US, UK, France, Australia, and India, trilateral dialogues with China, the Republic of Korea, and the United States, as well as dialogues with ASEAN and the EU. The third pillar is cooperation and capacity building. In the borderless cyberspace, in order to fill such security hole, Japan has been conducting capacity building and providing assistance for human resource development in various countries. For example, the ASEAN-Japan Cybersecurity Policy meeting has been held annually since 2009. Cyberspace and information and communication technology is changing daily. In order to build and maintain a free, fair, and safe cyberspace, the international community needs to keep making efforts.
Everybody is suffering from a security gap, and if we don't admit this from the very beginning, I think we're going to have a challenge. Why? Rapid rate of change, aggressive adversaries, the nature of the World Wide Web, of the internet, and the challenges of international cooperation. And that's where I'd like to start now in a little bit more of a focused way. Single countries are not going to deal effectively with the cyber challenge. We need to find a way to collaborate. That collaboration needs to be built on solid relationships, either within government or the private sector. And if we can't get governments to move as quickly as we can, there's no reason why the private sector, like companies, corporations, think tanks, universities, can't build relationships that might help. But unless countries find a way of deepening their relationships so that they can deal with sensitive national security issues more effectively than we sometimes can now, I'm not sure we're going to be able to push forward very effectively in dealing with the challenges of the Indo-Pacific on the cyber front.
Japan was following a defense-only policy in cyberspace too before the NDPG, National Defense Program Guidelines, but it showed us a new idea. So during an emergency, if somebody attacks us on cyberspace, we might launch a counter-strike in cyberspace. It may be quite natural for Canada and other countries, but Japan was not engaged in such policy. We were just sticking to defense-only policy. But now, after the National Defense Program Guidelines, we can stop adversaries' use of cyberspace. It's quite new for us. We do not say what kind of measures we use to stop adversaries' use of cyberspace, but we say we do counter-strike. That is a first step for cyber deterrence for Japan. We are ready to cooperate and collaborate with like-minded countries, including Canada. So we say cybersecurity for all. It is not only inside Japan, but also with the international partners. Cybersecurity for all, except bad guys.
If I could take a guess into the future, and I'm hoping it's a good one, I think that over time, the United States is going to take a much more expansive perspective on cyber threats and even what they are. I think that overall it's going to become more challenging to look at threats to information security within the narrow frame of what we like to call hacking. And over time, countries will need to adapt to the diversification of ways that adversaries can steal information or disrupt network access. And so overall for cooperation, I think information sharing will continue to be really important, as well adapting to new means of cyber operations, new trends like these software supply chain attacks. And it will become increasingly important to prioritize finding solutions to information security threats that are outside of our traditional conception of hacking. Our adversaries are continuously innovating, and so should we as well.
The challenge with cyberspace is that this fundamental reordering of relationship between institutions and states are something that institutions have been very poor at being able to adapt at. And those are institutions at all levels. Those are institutions within countries. Those are also institutions at an international level. It's also clear that cyberspace is a major strategic disruptor in the way that we see security framed through traditional national security lens, including the application of armed force. Cyber is not something that can be solved by the sheer force of a single nation state. It's going to require international cooperation. We need to start thinking like some of the countries that have recognized that interdependence is where true security can be found. We need to look at perhaps setting up institutions that will aggregate across the whole of government the ability to effectively communicate our interests across the social, political, and economic domain. And most of all, we need to start thinking a little bit outside of the box in terms of how we can come up with a global system of norms that addresses and bridges the gulf presently between the like-minded and the non-like-minded.
Australia has not really experienced major cyber havoc as other countries have, even quite recently, what we've seen in the US, for instance. And that is causing some complacency. And Australia's answer in all of this has been, let's shore up our national defense and further improve our defense agencies' response capabilities. And on cybersecurity, both the Defense Strategic Update and the National Cybersecurity Strategy contained two major investments. One was a $50 billion investment in cyber and information warfare capabilities, spread over 10 years, but still a substantial investment. And I think that's typical for Five Eyes countries, that kind of the cybersecurity role is so closely linked to the intelligence and the signals intelligence role. But this is definitely not the case in many countries, let's say in our neighborhood, and definitely not in our immediate neighborhood when we look at Southeast Asia or even the Pacific. This issue about militarization of cyberspace and the cybersecurity function is something that's been brought up quite often in conversations with partners, in particular with ASEAN partners. But this is very much internally and domestically focused. So I think all in all, and I think there are different pockets of areas where international collaboration is picking up. And I think Australia, with partners in the Indo-Pacific, is trying to play an active and a constructive role in all of that. And the more we'll join that effort, the better.